Other questions about meditation? Isn't this a great class?
I have a question.
Yeah, Brian.
Is the resonation imbued just into the alcohol or the entire nectar?
It's really interesting. You know, in history they've called alcohol spirits. Anybody ever notice that? And when people ingest alcohol, what the alcohol does is carries it across the blood-brain barrier and then releases it inside of the brain. But there's stuff that goes with it, and those are the spirits that go with it. Okay? And everything has, it was real interesting once. Mary Gallo made a comment. She's an Italian lady that runs a restaurant here in town, for anybody who doesn't know that. And she said that her family was making wine one day, and they were having a great big battle. And she read the back of our label and said that there's this energy inside of the wine, and it's because of the way that it's made. And she said to me, she caught on to this very clearly, because she's a very wise woman. She says, I sure don't want to drink any of our wine that's being made, to the extent that there was a big battle that was going on while it was being made, and those spirits will be within that wine. And it's true. The karma of what's going on when that wine is being made is within it.
So what does that say for commercial products?
It says, whoa. It says, whoa.
I mean,
to the
alcohol,
extent that you're taking a chance on anything that you take into yourself, because you don't know the origin of it or where it came from. And so that's why, most likely, the Jewish people came up with kosher.
Mm-hmm.
So that there was a supervisor watching what was going on while the foods were being put together. So that there wasn't a bunch of murdering going on in the building while they were making these sandwiches. You know what I mean? And when you get the potato chips or whatever, it has a circle with a K on it. Most likely the rabbi has been able to keep most of the people in the plant on the ground as they're flying around the room, you know, or doing something really weird to the food. And most of the people in the process probably respect the rabbi to an extent.
So that's why this
Now, I'm sure there's exceptions to everything. I'm sure there's some kosher food that's gotten out of there that hasn't been too kosher. But I'm sure that in most circumstances you could be safe with eating kosher foods.
because of the respect of that kind of...
Because of the respect that they have for the rabbi, to the extent that the rabbi has sacrificed his existence and his life to making things better for those people who use that food.
And the process was maintained.
And it's been a process that's gone down through a long period of time. Now, people probably out there, and we're not Jewish, right? Everybody knows that, right?
Some of us are.
I guess we're everything. Who knows what we are, you know? There's no barriers of religion here. The Hare Krishna take great care in preparing their food. And anything that ever touches the ground is never allowed back on the table. Everything ever falls off the table. And there are people who understand, because of their consciousness, that the things that you take into your body are very, very important, the way that they're made. You could, like you always tell me the story about, Al, that if your car's made on Monday at Detroit, you've got a real problem.
Yeah.
If it's made on Wednesday, you might have a chance. If it's made on Friday, write it off. Right?
Right, that's true.
And that's because of what?
Just because of the way the people are when they're working, how they are on Mondays as opposed to Wednesdays and Fridays.
It's the same thing with food. Exactly. And that's why it's so important that down the road, the people involved in consciousness raising, not saying that you're better than somebody else or something like that, because you're not. You're just different, okay? And enlarging one's consciousness, find themselves in an environment and an atmosphere where they can grow their own food, cook their own food, and take care of their own food, and they're not made a pawn of the foods of society.
So we create our environment from our food, which ingested creates different
It's exactly like the
effects.
nectars. It's exactly like the nectars. Except the nectars have a very potent resonation within them that's released inside of you when you ingest it.
Well, with that principle, then, the farm project that we've had has had good vibrations in the raising of the food, so the people that receive it receive something different as opposed to store-bought,
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
because it is a nectar in its own right.
Right. Now, where were we before we got off on this?
Meditation nectar.
All right, but there was another question. Bernie, what was your question? Did I answer?
I said, is the entire nectar affected rather than just the alcohol? Or
Yeah, that was the question. And so the alcohol acts as a carrier or a vehicle to take the spirits across the blood-brain barrier and release them in your mind, and also it acts as a carrier, a very rapid carrier throughout your whole body. Within 1 minute after you ingest it, it's gone through the membrane of the stomach and been carried across there, and as long as it takes one full cycle of your blood to go around your body, it's in all parts of your body. And it releases its energy into you, and so as you sit down, you take a little time to the nectar, an ounce preferably, very low in alcohol, about 11% alcohol. 1 ounce is a very minute amount of alcohol in your body. You take that 1 ounce, you sit down and you meditate for the period of time, or you do the meditation that you're used to doing, the one that you practice with, which is correct for you, because all meditations are correct, and then you finish your meditation. This takes you to that state, and it releases its energy within you and gives you the resonation of meditation, which allows you to turn your attention within. Terry?
At one time you gave an explanation for those of a scientific nature. Could you say something about modifying the swirls of the quarks of the electrons?
Modifying the what?
The swirls of the quarks of the electrons is
Oh, well, if you want to get into
those.
what happens is there's a logarithmic, not logarithmic, but an orbital path of the electrons around the atoms. And there's these subatomic particles that make up the atoms, which are called quarks. And they swirl on a logarithmic pattern of phi normally, if they're in resonation with of the elements that they happen to be with in a real harmonious consistency. What happens is when we make the nectar, we sing a very pure song, a very clean song. It's not distorted, what I mean by clean. There's not resonations of distortion in it. It's a very clear, light color. It's a very uncolored resonation. It's very precise. Any musician would know a very clean note would be a very pure note rather than a raspy note. It's a very clean note that we project into the nectar. And this causes the harmonic within the quarks, of the subatomic particles of the atoms, to be in a very precise design on phi. Now, if anybody who studied any sound technology where they put sound on particles, they can see the resonations of the particles take on different designs because of the type of sound that they put on them. And the sound that we put on to the subatomic particles within the nectar is a very clean, pure, precise sound that it has to be so clean and so pure that it can pierce itself into the minutest points of the atoms. For a very crude sound cannot get in there. And it goes pierces itself right into the heart of the subatomic particles and changes the resonation within inside and sets up an energy state in there, and it's suspended in time because of the pyramid, like in the womb, until it gives birth when you ingest it into your body. Yes?
You mentioned gender, and that there's the male gender that
projects itself
into it. Could you explain that? Is this just the males that are able to do this? What are we talking about when we talk about?
It's not just a male that's able to do this. All things have both male and female gender within them, and we develop those things within ourselves. Our strength within our male and our female gender within us. As long as they're in balance, everything is pretty well normal for us. It's when they get out of balance within us, it's in not necessarily a conscious level, but a subconscious level, that these genders are within us. And I wouldn't call them sexuality. That's a manifestation on the surface. It's a gender versus a sexuality.